Another edition of Madden and Benz, Unfiltered. Tim Benz and Mark Madden with you. News breaking this morning, Mark, that AT&T SportsNet has been purchased by Fenway Sports Group. Story just went up on our site at Trib Live moments before we started streaming here. So we're still picking up the bits and pieces of the story. So it looks like the Penguins broadcasting future is secured. The Pirates, they're not. And from what Rob Owen wrote in the story that we have in the Trib is aligned with everything that I've heard, which is the Pirates are leaning towards having MLB distribute their broadcast rights and pay them 80% of the rights themselves. So it would kind of be quasi in-house produced, I guess, if you're looking at the league doing it. But I guess the days of those two potentially being on the same outlet may well be coming to an end.
Well, the Pirates were approached by the Penguins to start a regional sports network independent of AT&T SportsNet. And the Pirates didn't want to contribute any of the startup costs. So I assume that's where this led to. The Pirates will do whatever. I don't know if they'll do whatever's cheapest or whatever would afford the most money. I mean, there's a slight difference there. But will the Penguins now hold the Pirates' feet to the fire? And like you said, the Pirates might just go to MLB to distribute their games. But, Tim, that's rather haphazard, isn't it?
Well, I'm just looking at the details now. And according to Sports Business Journal, they're suggesting the Pirates may still cut a deal with Fenway to remain on AT&T SportsNet or whatever it becomes. Or they could opt out, hand the rights to MLB, like I said before.
Yeah, but where would the games be then?
They'd have to find a new outlet here.
I got no idea what you're talking about, quite honestly.
Well, I think MLB would produce it, and then they'd find another channel here in Pittsburgh to distribute it. I don't know, like PNT, if KDKA wanted to hand over its second, what are they calling that now? KDKA Plus is what they're calling what I think used to be UPN. So they've got a couple of options, I suppose.
That all sounds a bit too home shopping network to me.
It does. It does. I actually, it's funny. This kind of goes back to, Mark, doesn't it? Like, weren't there rumors about this when Burkle and Mew still owned the team, like trying to get in bed with the Pirates or even buy the Pirates so that they could create their own regional sports network akin to what Yes does with the Yankees?
That lasted about 90 seconds, that possibility. So, yes, but no is a good way to put it.
I know what you're thinking. Is this at all going to manifest in getting
what
Liverpool?
I'm thinking is, I hope FSG doesn't sell Mo Salah to finance the network. That's my big fear.
Well, no, what I was wondering is in whatever form the network takes, will Liverpool games be on the air here in Pittsburgh? Like
they're on the air here anyway.
Well, you mean through various outlets like Sky
and I don't
or whatever?
think that FSG would take a local sports network in Pittsburgh and make it their flagship for Liverpool and Boston Red Sox. I just don't see that. That would take a big amount of expansion. I doubt they'd base it here if they did that. What this does open the door for, Tim, is all Paul Steigerwald all the time.
Well, look, Mark, this kind of goes to a bigger conversation that we can have, and it's not just about sports. It's about television in general when it comes to streaming. Like, for instance, streaming costs are getting so out of control. There's so many different outlets. You're being tempted to buy everything. I feel like it's going to all come full circle. We're going to wind up all on cable again because everybody's going to eventually realize you're paying the same thing and you're just muddling it for yourself.
Well, that's right. I always tell people who cut the cord, look at the total sum cost of everything you're paying for a la carte.
Including internet.
Right, and cable's just easier. And plus, which too, Tim, I'll give you an example. I pay $300 some a month for cable, which is a lot. I know, right? But if you can't afford $300 some a month to get every cable station in the world, I mean, go stand on a street corner with a sign on a cardboard box. I mean, give me a break.
Well, the streaming stuff to me, it's not as convenient to use as cable. It's not as user-friendly. The apps are tougher to get in and out, to flip-flop back and forth. The cost and trying to track all the costs and really what are you getting for your money. I said this a long time ago. I think this comes all the way back to where we were before. And then I wonder, okay, like 10 years from now, are we having a similar conversation about the Penguins and Pirates coming under the same tent again?
Well, I'll be dead 10 years from now, so it really won't matter.
All right, let's get to the Steelers, Mark, and they made a trade after we taped the podcast. We taped the podcast a little early yesterday, and then all of a sudden, shortly thereafter, Kevin Dotson dealt. I don't think that's all surprising. The only thing that's surprising about it is I thought maybe they'd be tempted to keep him because they were so disenchanted with what Kendrick Green has done in training camp in the preseason.
Yeah, but here's the problem, and I hope this doesn't mean they keep Kendrick Green. If they keep Kendrick Green after his preseason, it shows once and for all preseason doesn't matter even a little bit because you could not possibly have had a worse preseason than Kendrick Green. But the difference between Green and Dotson is Green can play center and Dotson can't. And Dotson, because of that, he's just a backup guard, which you don't want. You want a guy who can back up all three positions in the middle. Now, I feel a little bit bad for Dotson because he started all 17 games last year and never missed one snap despite playing with a lot of nagging injuries. But, Tim, he committed 12 penalties.
That's the big thing.
That's a lot of penalties. That added up to a ticket out of town. So I understand why they did it. But Kevin Dotson, I always thought gave 1,000%. So I got to give him credit for that. But this was always going to happen once they brought in Isaac Seumalo.
I think they've got enough answers at center, and they've even got that Spencer Anderson kid that can bop all the way up and down the offensive line. So,
well, Nate Herbig's hurt, though, right? I mean, that's your backup in the middle, but maybe not to start the season.
Eventually, I think once they get him used to snapping again, that could make, Green expendable.
Right, but he has played center, correct?
Herbig, very little. I think he said at one point he really, didn't want to come back, be active, and potentially have his first snap in however many years or whatever phrase he used to be against the San Francisco 49ers in week 1.
Tell him to lie about that, or he'll get cut too.
You said on the podcast you're a little nervous about some of the spots around the offensive line, particularly.
Well, I just don't think like Cole and the two tackles are all that good. Once Broderick Jones gets into the mix. And I got to tell you, Dan Moore's played okay from what we can see on TV. But yeah, I think when the strengths of your offensive line are both guards, that says a lot good about those guards and maybe not enough about everybody else.
And for whatever reason, it strikes me that Dan Moore has been better at left than he was at right. And obviously they like Chooks better at right than they do at left. So if they were to force Moore over to right because they don't think Chooks is getting the job done over there, and by the way, he's the one that costs the most. With all that potentially happening, I don't know that they make their offensive line better just to get the first rounder in there.
I got to be honest. I've talked to myself into thinking, oh, well, Dan Moore experience, he kept the job, didn't play bad enough, all that yada, yada you hear. I still can't believe they traded up to 14 to get Broderick Jones, and he's not starting week 1. I can't believe that.
You know what they could have done?
And you know what? No matter what reason they give, and even though they've hypnotized me by having a good preseason, the reasoning isn't good enough.
Well, you know who they haven't hypnotized are the odds makers. There's been no change, Mark, when it comes to the gambling lines. Very little.
The preseason almost never does that, Tim. Historically, almost never.
You mean in terms of just Vegas correspondence? It's never done that?
Yes. You'll rarely see the futures bet for the season change because of good results from a team in the exhibitions.
Well, now to go over 8.5 because the line is still at 8.5. It was at minus 167 back in June. I followed up exactly 2 months later on August 23rd. I looked at it and it's down to minus 150. So it actually costs less if you want to bet them over 8.5, which is a little surprising to me.
Yeah, but that's just fluctuation based on where the money is so far.
Yeah, and you know what? The under actually costs, the payout is a little bit less, which would suggest that there's some money coming in on them to go under. I don't know. I don't know what that's going to do as far as getting to the regular season. But the fact that they
them at 9-8 still.
Yeah, I had it at 10-7. I'm not going to adjust beyond 10-7 because they're living up to what I thought they would be. And I think that's the trap that a lot of people have gotten themselves into in talking about the Steelers, which is we all gave a million reasons why they thought we thought that they'd be better than 9-8. They've showed a lot of them. So let's expand the expectations even more. Like they're showing you why we all thought they'd be better. They're not showing you that you should think they're going to the Super Bowl. And I think that's where the gap occurs in logic.
Tim, I refuse to adjust my prediction for the season based on them manhandling inferior opposition in exhibition games. If they were playing Atlanta's second string in week 1, I would predict them to do a lot better than 9-8. But they're not. They're playing San Francisco.
So the only game that really has tempted you to potentially alter your expectations is the Buffalo game.
Not even them, really, because Buffalo, you could tell. Buffalo knows where they're at and who they are. You know, they approached that game with zero urgency. It was something to be got over with.
When I looked at the ESPN, ESPN does that football power index thing. They calculate your playoff chances, your playoff percentage, and all that.
Yeah, which is just a bunch of crap, but okay.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense when it's week 15 and you're trying to figure out 2 teams for 3 spots, that sort of thing in the wild card race. But they're doing it.
Everything's a list, Tim. Everything's a rating and a ranking. And if you can assign a convoluted percentage to it, so much the more believable.
Well, there you go. The convoluted percentage says that the Steelers have a 34.4% chance of making the playoffs, which is 10th in the AFC and 20th overall, behind the likes of the Falcons and the Browns, just in front barely by 2 percentage points. 0.2 of a percentage point in front of the Bears.
They trail the Browns.
Yeah, they trail the Browns. The Browns are 9th. Yep.
Well,
it just shows you what, because a lot of this market, like you said, it's convoluted. It's definitely convoluted when the math doesn't have any math to go on. Everybody's 0-0. So this is all.
I see them as about 10th in the AFC myself, give or take.
I think they're a little higher than that. I think they're about 6th, 7th, 8th, somewhere there. I think they're the last team in at 7. I'll stick with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe.
But you did say in the podcast, though, that potentially the biggest variable of the whole thing, Pickett, is looking less and less like a variable now and more of an assurance that you can count on him to be a lot better this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll improve. I think he's a leader. I think his tangibles are catching up to his intangibles. I worry about him less than I do, say, the overall caliber of the offensive line, because, Tim, we shouldn't forget, I know they upgraded that offensive line with Siamalu and eventually Broderick Jones, but none of them guys got hurt last year. And that's not going to happen again this year. I'm not sure they have enough playmakers on offense besides Pickens. I worry about their inside backers. Is Levi or Peasy's kid a legitimate number 1 outside corner? Will Matt Canada be as efficient when everything's not vanilla in the real games? What about when the defensive coordinator on the other sideline game plans for Canada? Will Canada adjust? I think there's a lot of variables we're ignoring as the Pickett spotlight blinds us.
Correct. And I do think that there's a lot of wanting to throw a parade in August because you're not going to be able to throw one in February, and we know it. I mean, there's a lot. This is the Twitter age. We all declare victory before victory has even been close to won. And I think people are doing that.
And we declare victory even when victory doesn't exist.
Yeah. And
we declare victory after a loss sometimes on Twitter.
Yeah, because they look good or they tried hard or, whatever. But yes, I do think that the great irony is that we always talk about the standard around here, and the standard has shrunk. The standard has shrunk to them being a 9-8 team. And if they want to raise that, especially if we're all talking about how great they are right now, well, let's remember that in January and February then. And let's not give them a pass based on injury. Let's not give them a pass because Mike Tomlin still had a winning season.
I don't give them a pass. I mean, I think they're 9-8. That's my unflinching viewpoint of how good they are.
Mark, we talked about the Pirates earlier. You went to the game on Sunday, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, they were losing by the time you got in your seat, and even Paul Skenes had a rough outing in Altoona.
Well, Skenes got his ass kicked. What was it, 3 or 4 runs in 2/3 of an inning? But, I'm not too concerned about that. I'm concerned about them ruining him in the long run, because I believe that'll happen. But in terms of one bad outing at AA, that's no big deal at all.
Do you think that they'll ruin him in terms of his arm, or do you think that they're going to ruin him in terms of his pitch mentality, the pitch to contact, get away from just blowing guys away? Is that your biggest?
I don't know, Tim. I just have no faith in them to ever do the right thing developmentally. One thing we've not talked about enough is drafting Henry Davis 1-1, first pick, first round, and not believing in the position he plays indicates that's just a terrible decision to pick him 1-1. We'll worry about where he plays later. It's the first pick in the draft. You got to be sure.
Well, Broderick Jones wasn't the first pick in the draft, but is there a parallel there, do you think? Did they trade up?
Yeah, the Steelers would have played him at running back.
Hey, you never know. Carry share, Mark. That's what we're all talking about with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. Carry share. Give Kendrick Green the ball.
That Davis thing, isn't that just terrible? That they drafted a guy in the first round, first pick, he's a catcher, and they're never letting him catch. They decided, well, we drafted you because you're a catcher, but we're not going to let you catch ever.
Yeah, I remember when you and I talked about this, was after Tamar Johnson got drafted, and we sort of made a quip about how they had stockpiled so many middle infielders, and everybody got all over us. But, to a certain extent, I think we're seeing it now. There becomes a logjam. And if you get Davis as a catcher.
It's not a logjam, Tim. They simply don't know what they're doing.
They just don't have anybody? Is that what?
They're an incompetent baseball organization, period. Look at O'Neal Cruz with his rehab stopped. They're incompetent in every regard. They don't know what they're doing.
So should they just have not restarted Skenes if there's never any plans to get him to the majors then this year?
Well, I don't know. Whatever they do, I think it's the wrong thing. I don't trust them.
There is 30 years of evidence, 35 years of evidence for people to be dubious about pretty much any decision.
But the Henry Davis thing's the biggest example. To draft a catcher 1-1 and then never have him catch is ludicrous.
Well, you're unplugging the value.
If you didn't have faith on him and a catcher, you should not have picked him 1-1.
Yeah, you're unplugging the value. The unique nature of what he did was partly aligned with the fact that he was a catcher.
That's right.
And you could get value other places on the diamond because your catcher hit as well as conceivably he would have.
That's correct.
And Rodriguez looks like he's got a great arm, and it looks like he'll be able to call a good game and all that. But, I still think Davis is supposed to be the better hitter. And I don't know that Rodriguez is going to be what they think he's going to be worthwhile bat-wise behind the plate.
And I also think part of Davis's problems in the field and even at bat is that he's flummoxed by, they won't let me do what I do.
No one's more flummoxed than Sawinski right now. He is lost at this point.
He's not very good. That's the big problem.
Before we get to the comments, Mark, just quickly about the Penguins. You see them doing anything, or are they just going to be dormant until camp and see if anything falls out of the sky to them?
I think there's no news till camp, and then they'll bring in a few wingers on PTOs and probably sign one of them ultimately.
I do think they need another top line forward. I know people are stressed about the other right side D. I think Ruido could be fine in that role. I think the bigger deal is trying to figure out at least one winger that can move everybody else up so they can get by for however long Gensel is out, and then have that guy settle in as potentially like a third winger that can bot maybe up to the top, like a top 9 winger, so to speak.
Yeah, they need like a middle 6. Like if they got a Tomas Tatar, and everybody's, genuflecting before that possibility, I don't know. He made 4.5 last year. He wouldn't make near that here. So I don't know. But if you got a guy like that, then when everybody's healthy, when Gensel heals up, then you have a guy who can really be like a good third line guy, whether it's Rust or Riley Smith or Tatar. A guy could anchor the third line, and that wouldn't be bad.
All right, this comes from Ba Goldstein. Nutting should resurrect Pax for the Buccos, but only on the premise that if a game gets too out of hand, it'll cut to reruns of Mama's Family.
I don't know what that is.
Pax was kind of like a really poor, watered-down version of TBS or TNT, and they replayed like old bad sitcoms over and over again. So
this is a really poor, watered-down version of a joke. Let's go to the next contestant.
Next contestant is Brian. All this talk about sports networks, this or that channel, too much hassle. You can only really watch one at a time unless you're a super genius. For the rest of us, we can allegedly stream for free.
I don't get the reference to me.
Well, unless you're capable somehow of watching and taking in 2 channels at once. I guess you could do picture-in-picture, but...
I just flip back and forth rapidly between stuff.
But that's hard to do on the apps. It's harder to do on an app.
By the way,
TV.
Speaking of TV, Tim, I don't like those that app stuff. I don't even know. No, you're right. You can't flip back and forth. When I watch Liverpool on Peacock, you have to dump out of Peacock to watch something else even for a second.
Right.
And then go back to Peacock.
It's the death of the last
button. About TV. I look at these Sunday night shows, they're running out of people to put on. Adam Crowley, he works for the affiliate with Channel 2, but he's on Channel 11. What's going on? Actually, I know what's going on. There's a lot of sordid stories behind the movement back and forth, but I'm not talking. All I know is every day my price goes up. Every day. If you want me to ruin my Sunday night, it's going to cost you.
Nick says, do you think Liverpool will end up selling Salah? And if they don't, do you think you will get upset and hold out?
I don't think he'll get upset and hold out. I don't know how it's going to resolve itself, because now I heard the asking price is almost up to the offer rather from the Saudi league is up to like $200 million. And he would become the highest paid player in the world once he got there too. That said, if you sell him, you're punting on this season. Okay, you're giving up on winning the league and maybe even top 4. That said, you could use that money to refinance an unbelievable rebuild of your team, but you just couldn't do it right now. Like I would tell the Saudis, look, we'll sell you Salah for $200 million next year. That would be what I'd say, but I don't know what they're going to do.
Ron says, don't forget they traded Mookie Betts, talking about FSG with the Red Sox.
Yeah, but that wasn't based on finances as much as it was their belief that when players get to their like 27, 28 years old, they're going to fade. And Betts didn't. He was but most players do. He just didn't.
This is from Eric, who says, I'd love to tell FSG, or I'd love if FSG would tell the Pirates to take a hike. I mean, I get it in principle. Everybody's mad at the Pirates, but I don't know how that helps anybody. You know,
the Pirates are good programming. They're every night programming. You can't tell the Pirates to take a hike. The value of the programming, if only to fill the time, is too valuable. Now, what kind of financial deal you make with them, I do not know.
Yeah, I just think that if you're under the same tent, you've got alliances, and it's so rare.
If I were FSG, I would not let the Pirates lowball me on rights fees.
No, nothing like that. I mean, like you hold a good deal for yourself, but I do think it's better. There's a reason why the Pirates and Penguins have coexisted for as long as they have. It's better to be together than not,
I don't think this is a significant story till we see what the Pirates are going to do.
Richard says the Steelers will likely finish in the 9-win range and either just miss the playoffs or squeak in and get throttled.
Gee, that sounds familiar.
But just as long as Tomlin has never had a losing season, the streak continues. And
that's true. That's true. The best thing that could happen to the Steelers would be if they'd go 8-9 one year, so all that crap would be out of the way, and that artificially set and too low bar wouldn't exist.
Well, I think what it is, Mark, a lot of it, and it kind of goes to the conversation we're having about with a lot of the death of how local media operates. You go on Twitter, you see clips, you come across 2-minute, 30-second conversations on YouTube, and you get what you get, which is the national media nonstop telling you how great Tomlin is, and you lose the local perspective that used to balance that out. And the local perspective was, yeah, well, how has he gotten to those 9-win seasons, and how many years has it been since they've had a playoff win? And how many times in his existence as coach have they not won a playoff game? Way more often than they have otherwise. So nobody says that nationally. And that's why this stuff gets skewed.
Yeah, but the locals are all too happy to play along, too, the local media. And the fans especially.
Mark, speaking of television, I am caught up now, I think, on Winning Time. Was there another Winning Time that came out last night?
Yes, last night.
All right, so I haven't seen the newest one. I got up to date on the first 3. The third one was the most Larry Bird we've ever seen in the whole thing.
Yeah,
I actually think the actor, you were talking about this last week, I believe, how cartoonish it all is. It is cartoonish. But the actor does a nice job getting the Larry Bird mannerisms down, the high release of the shot, the ball fake, the little one-legged shot in the paint. He's got a lot of the Bird mannerisms down. I'll give him credit for that.
I wonder what Bird thinks of that, because Jerry West does not like the way he's portrayed. And now Paul Westhead, not that anybody cares what Paul Westhead thinks, but he is just a twitchy neurotic. He's also a cartoon character. So, and Jason Segel's a great actor. So I don't know, but it's a good series, if so much fiction. And now we've reached the point where Magic won't play for Paul Westhead anymore, so it's going to get hot.
I've not yet gotten all the way through, but I started watching it. I've not yet gotten all the way through BS High, the Bishop Sycamore documentary. Have you seen this
I'm not
yet?
interested. Not interested.
It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. The way that this guy scammed everybody, even to get where I am now in the documentary, which is like the launching point of the team. I don't know how people fell for this crap.
Yeah, I only got so many hours in the day, Tim. So many hours left of my life. That one doesn't strike me as being any good.
Oh, wait, I skipped a couple. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm watching White House Plumbers now.
Is that any good? I actually forgot
really
about
good.
that.
Woody Harrelson.
I skipped over a couple here. Bill says the Pirates have had a tradition of losing and playing cheap, whiny baseball since 1980. Yeah, and that was underscored, I think, with the Hall of Fame nominations this weekend. We talked a lot about Tekulve going in, but by the way, that's the last championship. And when I say last championship, I don't mean most recent.
Well, you know what else we do too? Because they've had such bad baseball so often, we blow the really brief good periods like the Bonds period and the McCutchen period out of proportion. We remember those as being a lot longer than they were.
Yeah, they're each 3 years apiece.
It's like how many years since the championship? It's 43 years, right? Yeah, 43 years. And those good years encompass only 6 of those 43 years. But we cling to those. We cling to Cueto dropping the ball, all that crap. And we cling to the blame, too. Like if only Bonds had made a better throw on Sid Bream, blah, blah, blah.
Dave says the standard is no longer the standard. Mediocre is now acceptable. Give me my participation trophy. Yeah, the Steelers are a part of a bigger issue when it comes to sports, when it comes to society, sure. But
well, one thing I will say, I just wrote a column about this that was very well received. In fact, so well received that Sally Wiggin retweeted it. That the Steelers have gotten rid of their jerks and now are more Steeler-like. They've either organically or intentionally restored the culture. No Brown, no Bell. We're far enough away from AB where the residue isn't there. No Juju, no Claypool. And I know people love Juju, but all he was a more friendly and less effective version of AB. It's good all those guys are gone, and they've been replaced by glue guys like Siamalu, Pat Pete, Allen Robinson. The dressing room's taken a good turn. Now, I say that having not been in it, and I never will be again, but that's what it looks like from a distance.
Finally, Mark, you getting excited for Aerosmith at PPG Paints Arena?
I'm going to Guns N' Roses in Charlotte tomorrow night, Tim. One thing at a time.
Okay. Set list going to change at all there or no?
It changes like 3 or 4 songs night to night. So, yeah, I hope so. But I like going to concerts. That's what I like to do.
Then I know there's a huge night that night in Pittsburgh because it's Aerosmith, it's Rival Sons, it's Glorious Sons, 3 different concerts, 3 different venues, all on that Wednesday night. Springsteen's coming in. You're not going to Springsteen. I know that. You love concerts, but you will not be going to Springsteen.
Where's Springsteen at?
PPG Paints.
Yeah, I'm going to Clapton.
When's that one?
Might be 2 days after Aerosmith.
Oh, okay. All right. Then, yeah, Springsteen comes in like that next Tuesday and Thursday. He's in for 2 nights.
Yep, I'm not going Tuesday, and I'm not going Thursday.
We will be back for Madden and Benz.
Yeah, I mean, like Springsteen, if people like him, and I know people love him,
yes,
I just don't get it. I just don't see it. I see him as phony-ass Americana. I see him as a guy who changes out of his jeans and into his Armani suit, even as he cavorts with 9/11 widows and counts his money.
Well, I think part of the issue for you is, too, you've got Rossi and Pursuta around you all the time. And
McMillan, too.
Oh, and McMillan, too, right, yeah.
Yeah, but like my feeling is very sincere. Like, I think John Cougar Mellencamp is what Springsteen is supposed to be. I think Mellencamp's a much more honest version of Springsteen.
Did you go to see Mellencamp at the Benetton when he came through?
I just say I liked him.
Oh, okay. All right. We will be back.
He's real good. Hey, Springsteen, for what he does, is real good. Just not my cup of tea.
Monday, we're going to do Madden and Benz Unfiltered on Labor Day as normal. Mark will be back from the lake. I'll be back as well. So we're going to do it just as we normally do on the holiday, 9:30 a.m. right here on the Trib Live Facebook stream.